We are now live. Mr. Fleming, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Frank, it is at long last. I'm really excited that I am here.
Many months. We finally managed to get our schedules to converge.
We are finally here. Yeah, and I just want you to know how pleased I am. Because I don't know what the agenda is for our discussion, and I know that there may be one or two people that are either fond of you or fond of me that are tuning in, but I would like to say for public record how much I have always enjoyed our discourse.
That's a good sign. People who don't enjoy discourse with me are usually worse guests, I think.
Do you invite them?
Well, okay. What I said at the beginning of doing the podcast is that I will literally take a deaf mute. I'm so desperate for guests.
Yeah.
And so
that makes me feel really special, by the way.
I know that was a bad thing to tell my guests. But
maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But I appreciate how candid you are.
I sometimes worry that forced me to not say no, which really I shouldn't say no because I miss about half of the podcasts because I don't get around to getting anyone because I don't want to, excuse me, could you please be on my show? Thank you very much. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I don't know.
It is. I don't know. This is my first one, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, but entertainment's in the eye of the beholder. So
only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Yeah.
So Monte Vista to Monterey High. Ooh. A little bit of a jarring transition, would you say?
Yeah, but probably not for some of the same reasons that people would expect, because I think that jarring for me personally, yes, not in a bad way, but I think at Monte Vista, I was very comfortable, and I genuinely had a super high regard for the people that I got to encounter on a daily basis. And, as a teacher, I'm really, really in it for the money. No, not for the money. As a teacher, I'm really in it for, because I love students. I do. So if there are any adults out there listening right now, I'm going to tip my hand a little bit and say, I don't really enjoy you as much as I enjoy students. I don't dislike you. I just enjoy students more. And I think it's maybe because, I don't know. I mean, high school students in particular they're just on the verge of knowing themselves and discovering things about themselves that make them really interesting people. And I guess I love that. Like I love getting to be in the mix of all of that. So Monterey High School, jarring change because it was jarring change. And because I went from something that was consummately comfortable to something that was way more new. But I mean, it would be unfair for me to represent Monterey High as being anything more than just completely open-armed in the way they received me, and so enthusiastic and supportive for what they have hired me to do. I mean, my principal for the first month of my being there, almost on a daily basis, would just affirm how happy he was that I was there. And I don't know. I wasn't really expecting that, so that was great. And it was probably necessary because many days I would just be driving the half hour, between Watsonville and Monterey. I'd be driving and thinking, what have I done? Why am I doing this? Why did I leave everything that was so comfortable to something that's so new? And I'm careful in my word choice because Monterey is not uncomfortable. Or if it is, it only is because it's new.
Yeah.
So it's weird because being a part of private education and faith-based private education specifically for so many years, I would hear a lot from colleagues that were in similar faith-based private education environments, and they would speak of public education in kind of disparaging ways. and like, I don't know how hard the students are, or, and they're not, I mean, like they're great. I mean, I feel like I've developed some really, really wonderful relationships with some really cool young men and young women. And, that's super rewarding. But at the same time, there are students at Monte Vista, yourself included, that I miss, like I miss every day. And I think it's also because, we've had a history that's been forged over time. I don't know, people go through, freshmen in high school are experiencing some fairly traumatic things as they're making their transition from middle school to high school. And so to be a ninth grade teacher can be a really special thing, like in terms of just being a safe place, or being a safe person, or being an understanding ear. So if I served that role in any way, I think it's the foundation for some really close relationships and significant relationships. So, and I think about some of the things that that you and I have been through over the course of time. Some of them connected to projects that you've worked on. And by the way, I mean, let me just say, because we have an audience listening to us, that Frank Hurley is brilliant. He is one of the most brilliant young people I know, a creative genius, in my opinion. Sorry.
All right.
He did not ask me to do that. That was not a plug.
No.
Yeah. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you're. Wait. No. Well, I'm blanking on how to speak English. I was about to say "you're forgiven" or something like that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I failed to do so.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. I'd love to be forgiven. That's awesome. So, yeah. So anyway, the Monterey High School thing. I love getting to do what I'm doing, but it's scary. I've joked around in the past that, my tombstone needs to probably have one of two different epitaphs. And if I can't make up my mind, I'll probably have someone invent a pivoting tombstone, so I can have two. And I don't think either of the epitaphs are particularly complimentary to my character. I think about, again, having taught in faith-based private education, being a person of faith for so many years. I always feel like, it would be such a compliment to my character if there was some appropriate Bible verse that could be on my tombstone.
That's boring. I'm sorry.
Well, boring or not, it's not appropriate, because what I think is appropriate, on the one side of my pivoting tombstone, it's going to say, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Words to live by. And
I can't really dispute the truth of such a statement.
Yeah. And on the other side, if it pivots, maybe in the wind, it's going to pivot in the wind and it's going to turn. And the other compliment to my character is going to say, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. And I think of how many times I've jumped in to do something or start something, and then midair think, dear God, why did I just jump? But it's too late.
Yeah.
So gravity is going to happen. And developing a vocal arts program is so much fun. And it's so rewarding and terrifying. And fun, obviously, because I love music and I love making music, and my undergraduate degree was music. I feel like a lot of my life has been defined by music, so I think that's a good fit. Rewarding, because Monterey High School has not had any vocal arts for over 5 years.
Oof.
So,
and we talk about how the Monte Vista vocal and instrumental arts programs kind of went down the drain, but comparatively,
well, yeah, and Monterey is one example of many public schools that just don't that, either because of the lack of funding or because the domino effect of the lack of funding meant that there weren't as many credentialed music teachers, So anyway, for whatever reason, Monterey has not had this program forever. And I think that's part of the reason why not just the administration at my high school, but the administration in the district have been so encouraging and enthusiastic. I think they're just so happy that there's a person with experience which can mean old, but I didn't necessarily mean it that way. A person with experience and a credential and that was enthusiastic about students and excited to build something. It seemed like it was a really, really good fit. And that doesn't change how I emotionally navigate the change. Mm-hmm. So that was a really long answer.
That's why you're on a podcast.
Okay, all right.
If we were doing one of those little short, quick question videos, that would be a different story.
I would suck at that, by the way. If you are interested in my being a guest on your super short answer format, it's probably not a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully this will work a little bit better. But so building a vocal arts program, what's the enthusiasm levels like just from the general? Because at Monte Vista, I feel like people like me, and I don't consider myself to be too hardcore of a theater kid or like choir kid, for example.
Incidentally, by the way, congratulations on being cast as Captain Von Trapp.
Thank you.
In A Sound of Music, which, by the way, will be performed in April. Is it April?
Yeah, end of April, beginning of May. It's the rest.
Buy your tickets.
It's the rest of my high school career.
Yeah, there's
agreed.
that.
Yeah,
there is that. Yeah.
I was gonna do it, and I was excited to do it, and then after I had auditioned and gotten the part and was locked in, I looked at the schedule for the first time, and I realized that
this is going to be my life.
Yeah, this is the grand finale. I'm gonna do Sound of Music, and then I'm gonna graduate high school, and then I'm gonna get on with my.
Yeah, there are probably some administrators at Monte Vista that are thinking, okay, he's going to be busy and he's not going to create any controversial projects between now and the end of the school year.
Yeah, we got to, idle hands are the devil's workshop, I guess.
Yeah, so we're not going to let him be idle at all. He's going to be rehearsing.
I love conspiracy theories about how Monte Vista's out to get me. That is my favorite genre of conspiracy theory.
Well, one of the reasons why I just read a book on conspiracy theories because I'm just always so interested in why people are so gullible. And sorry,
conspiracy theories are awesome.
Okay, there's a reason why people love conspiracy theories, and one of the reasons is because some conspiracies are real.
Yeah,
so
like
if there's enough,
like the Gulf of Tonkin, like do I have to?
Yeah. So I mean, there's enough real ones that a person could take pause and be like, well, maybe. I mean, it seems far fetched, but maybe. So,
yeah. But it's also just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
That they're working against you in secret.
Well, it's the great stuff of like epic narrative, and we're interested in epic narrative because most people don't live epic narrative.
Yeah, exactly. But we're all trying to.
Yeah. Or we all want to believe we are.
I think about that a lot where I have these deluded fantasies about my life after high school and whatnot, in my adult life, about it being good. And about it going smoothly and about me being successful early on and just having a good life. And I think, that would be kind of nice in a way, but at the same time, that's really boring and lame.
Oh, Frank, please live epic narrative. I picture you in your future living
you
epic
need
narrative,
lows to complement the highs.
Yeah, right.
And what I guess the answer to that is that you are going to screw up no matter what. You don't need to try. That's one of the things that's just a God-given gift.
It's kind of it's definitely a human nature thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's kind of like there's no reason to, God, I wonder if there's someone in the world who's insufferable enough who's like, one of my flaws is that I don't make enough mistakes. So I try to make mistakes. I eat healthier. I've got to lay off the sweet treats, and I need to make more mistakes in order to be a more interesting person.
Yeah. I've never met that person.
Me neither. Yeah. I hope I don't.
I hope I don't either.
Have to resist the urge to punch them in the face.
I was just thinking, I don't think of myself as being a consummately or a naturally violent person, but I could make an exception for that person. Yeah. And you know what? If they're so good, they're not going to hit back. So.
Kind of a safe target.
Yeah, really like, oh, don't hit me back. Remember, you have a standard.
Well, no, they're trying to make more mistakes. That's a perfect.
Yeah, never mind.
Escalating violence.
Never mind. Okay, go ahead. Hit me.
Yeah.
Make your day.
Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, we got off on a little bit of a tangent.
A little bit of a rabbit trail.
Again, that's what podcasts are for.
Yeah,
if the podcast, if you weren't allowed to have tangents, it would be, I suspect, pretty boring.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a podcast.
People complain about tangents so much, and I'm guilty of it just right now.
Right.
But I'll be having a conversation with someone, and they're like, "Oh, we got off on a tangent." And I'm like, it's called a conversation.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens.
The tangents are the part of the conversation that's like spontaneous. Yeah. That's usually the most interesting part.
Would you rather it be, what do we do in English today? We go over the book and then we do an MCQ. Okay, thank you, bye, goodbye. Is that how you want our interactions to be?
Okay, let me just say, I don't want our interactions to be that way, but I do know a couple of people that's kind of what I'd like the interactions to be. So I'm not mentioning any. I'm not mentioning any names. Yeah, I'm not.
People who are
those
insecure
are the
about how successful they seem,
right,
compared to other people,
trying to make mistakes just to make it, more interesting.
Nobody likes me because I'm too perfect. So in order for people to like me, I just need to. So that's the real question: is the perfect life one that's filled with despair?
Yeah, apparently.
Because that's the
logical conclusion.
If not, then you're just lame, right?
Right. Yeah.
So. Yeah,
can I just say, I do want to, I mean, I do feel like since I'm on the air and there's a microphone in front of me and I can say whatever I want to say, and I'm in your presence, I do feel like something that I've always admired about you.
Is this going to happen like every 10 minutes?
Probably. Yeah, I probably will. Yeah, probably. But something I've always admired about you is you are... You can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what it seems like to me. It seems like to me that if you make a mistake, if you stumble in some way or other, you're usually pretty quick to just kind of reflect and want to learn. I mean, where I think a lot of people, their reaction to their own flaws are denial, or escape, or run for your life, or and I, in the years that I've known you, I'm always kind of like impressed with the fact that you'll just be like, okay, all right, well, I guess I'm going to process this, and I guess I'm going to learn something from this, and I don't know, maybe I'm in awe of that because I am the kind of person who's like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to look at the ugly part of, all that thing that I was just responsible for. And then, I learned from you, Frank.
My suspicion about my inner psychology is that there are a lot of flaws that I really do have that secretly I like. Like, because again, they make me seem more human, and I want to be able to exploit my flaws, maybe for the sake of artistic expression or something. But there oftentimes, especially this year, I will encounter flaws that I actually have, and I do feel the real urge for denial in a way that I don't often.
Yeah,
I think that. There's a strong chance that my self-esteem actually isn't as low as it seems. I just fetishize low self-esteem because my entire life, especially when I was younger, I was just a horrible person who was a jerk to everybody, and I don't want to be that. So I think, well, the way to be and this is kind of messed up logic, of course, but the way to be a better person is to recognize my flaws and talk about it and realize how bad I am, and etc. So I think I almost look for that.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like, what you're describing, there is a dynamic of reflection that's a part of that's super healthy. I think it could very easily tip into self-loathing, and that's not healthy.
Yeah, no, it does.
But and I'm sure it does. Yeah, and I'm sure it does. But I feel like living. I mean, if you're living in the tension of wanting to be reflective versus self-loathing, that's probably a little bit healthier and a little bit more like self-educational than the person who is always in denial about their flaws. And I don't know though. I mean, I feel like most people are, if they're not in denial about their flaws, they want to distract themselves and think about something else. because, being flawed, for whatever reason, I think most people find it painful.
Yeah, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
For those of you out there who like me are flawed people,
Right.
we can all attest to the fact that it sucks, except for the fact that if we weren't flawed, it would also suck.
Yeah.
Because then no one could relate to us and
Yeah.
we would just be an obnoxious existence.
Trying to do things wrong so we could relate. Oh, did we that was a full circle
that
thing.
fictional
We brought
person,
that. Yeah.
Man, I want to meet them just so that I can be angry at them.
They're fictional. Yeah.
Yeah,
they are
this one time Josh asked me, Frank, do you think that you assume the worst about your motivations for things? Do you think that because I'll often describe my inner motivations as being worryingly selfish and superficial, because I think that deep down that's really a lot of how I think and a lot of what I go about things. But Josh asked me, do you think that you have a tendency to like seek that out and to try to say that that's there even when maybe it isn't as much? And I said, yeah, probably. I think I'm likely inaccurate in my ability to talk about my motivations, which ironically is me assuming the worst about my motivations.
Yeah. Wow. It was like a circle within a circle. I feel like we're looking at reflections of the mirror in the mirror. It just kind of goes on and on and on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, but we're really just talking about human nature. I mean, I think that, when I think about, the huge parts of me that are capable of being like grossly manipulative of other people and are, probably obnoxiously narcissistic. And when I see those things and can reflect on those things, and again, I can't like separate myself from like my faith worldview. But the reality is, I really do find it easier to not feed those baser parts of who I know I am if and when I can focus my attention on others. I just, Mrs. Fleming is visiting her sister in Florida right now. I don't know if they're listening, but if they are, hi, Jeanette. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Daryl. I miss you. And I'm really excited you're coming home Sunday morning.
Did Kevin used to be Frank? Is he the one?
No, no, Tyler used to be Frank.
Tyler used to be Frank.
Yeah. Tyler used to be Frank.
Yeah. I wondered, Mrs. Fleming told me about that in England. She goes, and this was out of the blue. We were at breakfast and we sort of ran into each other and we were sitting at the same table. And she just struck up this conversation topic. She said, is it her brother or her uncle?
Her brother.
Her brother.
Yeah, her brother.
My brother's name was Frank, but he did so many horrible things as Frank and was so ashamed of who he was when he was Frank that he changed his name to Tyler. And I'm like, are you trying to tell me something? This seems like a coded message.
No. Well, every now and then she does call you Tyler. No, she doesn't. I'm totally kidding. But I went to I wanted to avoid traffic on the way home from taking her to the San Jose airport. So I thought, rather than being in traffic and then going home and eating late, I'm kind of hungry now. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to get something to eat. And so I stopped at Panda Express. It's a guilty. I love Panda Express. I stopped at Panda Express and my fortune cookie, which they don't really have. Do you know they don't have fortune cookies anymore? Like they're not really fortunes. They're just like words to live by. Fortune cookies are
embarrassing at this point.
You think?
Yeah, because they were invented.
I just want a good fortune cookie.
First of all, they don't taste good. Second of all,
no, I like them. I like the taste of a fortune cookie. You can't
because you want to stuff it in your mouth, but then there's a piece of paper in there that you don't want to swallow.
No, you have to take that out first. I mean, okay, let me just say this though. I like fortune cookies. They could be improved if they were in chocolate. But I mean, but aside from that, but my fortune cookie, the little fortune that came out, which is not a fortune anymore, it just said invest in others. And I thought, yeah, because like when you invest in other people, I just don't know if there's anything more satisfying. I don't know if there's anything more personally rewarding. And then, you go on the merry-go-round of thinking of like, well, then are you really investing in other people or is that for you?
Yeah.
And I guess I think, well, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, someone has been built up, someone's been edified, someone's life has been encouraged. And if the person who was the encourager, if a side benefit of that was a sense of like that was time well spent, like I feel good about that happening.
I feel like a better person, and that makes me happy about myself, even if that's the inner motive.
Right. Yeah.
If you really get to it.
Yeah. And I this is the thing though, I've thought about that. And I think in the moment, if I find myself in a situation where I have the opportunity to encourage someone, I never ever think I'm going to feel good about myself later. Like that never crosses my mind.
I think I do.
Do you? Yeah. Because I think at the time, I'm just really thinking about what are the things that I can say? What are the things I could do that would be encouraging to this person? What are experiences that I've had that would bring valuable perspective to this person?
Yeah, no, for sure. I get that. But then occasionally there is, I think I have experienced wow, you're such a good person. What a good job you're doing. You're so cool. Yay. And then I realized that must be
that wasn't you. That was an alternate personality.
Oh,
yeah.
Great. Good to know.
No, I'm not diagnosing. By the way, I will say this though, because if people who know me, I will, something that's been super surprising to me about Monterey High School is
it has multiple personality disorder.
Yes. No.
Wow.
Well, no.
Okay.
But it's funny that we would make that joke because there isn't enough. There's not enough demand for a music program yet that justifies a full-time person in the music program, which is good because I don't necessarily want to be a full-time music person. I also have a credential in social science. And so being at Monterey High School means I get to straddle departments. And because it's an IB school, I get to work in both the individuals and societies department.
I bet Monte Vista feels real insecure. Not only did they snatch Mr. Fleming, but they're also already an IB school.
Yeah, they are already an IB school. They're about
Get it together, Monte Vista.
They're about 2 years ahead in terms of, but I will say this too. Monterey High School they are very, very generous with their experience. Like, anyone at Monte Vista that would want to connect with anyone at Monterey can't wait to they're super generous with the spirit of like, hey, this is where we've been and we'd really love to help anyone else. So that has been wonderful. But because I get to straddle departments, I teach a course. I teach 2 sections of a course that one semester is psychology and the other semester is sociology. And I just finished teaching psychology, and I have taught psychology as a unit of study in a bigger class. Like I taught in a comparative worldviews class. And so psychology was a unit of study in that course, and sociology was a unit of study in that course. So this is the first time I've taught the subject for an entire semester, and it has been so much fun. Like I've really, really enjoyed. Now the weird thing is, and this is probably where every school is the same. The summer before I started working at Monterey, I was emailing administrators and just basically saying, "Hey, I'm going to teach this class. Is there a syllabus? Is there a course description?" I was given a textbook, but I was just like, is there any kind of an outline of someone who's taught this class before on, nothing. So this year has been challenging in that I am developing this vocal arts program and I am writing a course. And so the course that I'm writing, obviously I just finished the psychology part of it, and I'm currently writing the sociology part of it. And they are 2 subjects that I've always loved anyway. So, the whole thing about being in this new place, all the stuff I get to do is really cool and fun and challenging and interesting and stimulating and I'll say this too, for all of the naysayers that have been in private education and or private faith-based education that, public school is a battleground and a war zone and all of those things. No, not really. I mean, yeah. I mean, do we have a police presence on campus? Occasionally, as does Monte Vista.
Yeah.
Do we have kids that sometimes use shocking language? Yeah.
Luckily, we don't have that at Monte Vista, though. So
Right. I never heard it, except for every day.
Yeah.
And then, are there like, some really textbook teen problems and issues? Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Right. I mean, so I guess the thing is like, well, I was working with teenagers and I love working with teenagers, and now I'm working with teenagers and I love working with teenagers. And so, from that standpoint, there's not a big difference. There is a big difference in terms of just learning new culture. Where's the copy machine? Just those practical things of like, I don't know what in the heck I'm doing. Oh, but someone can help me, And so I find that I go back and forth between the panic of the new and then being like, calm down. You feel this way whenever you're new. I felt this way when I was new at Monte Vista.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, well, I will say this though. I miss Mrs. Fleming. I for the two of us at Monte Vista, we got to work not just next door to each other, but we got to work next door to each other with two rooms that were joined by a glass wall,
Yeah.
and we got to teach two sections of classes together every day. And it's funny. I was just sharing with a colleague today, when we would have back to school nights and parents would come and they would come into that room that was divided by the glass wall, and we'd open it up and they would look over on one giant whiteboard and it would say Mrs. Fleming, and they would look to the other side of the room at the other giant whiteboard and it would say Mr. Fleming, and they'd be like, is that a coincidence? I'm like, no, we're actually married, and then a lot of couples, a lot of parents would just be like, oh, we couldn't do that. And I just think, I get it.
You guys okay?
Yeah. I get that, maybe there is such a thing as like healthy space and that, but I've never felt that with Mrs. Fleming before. Like, we actually really enjoy each other's company and we really respect each other's abilities and really feel the complement of each other's abilities in our lives. So to not have that be a part of my daily life is a huge change, and hard, hard and a bit sad, and yet now we get to share worlds with each other. I was really, really grateful when she was able to finally come to the first concert that we did last semester, because I felt like all these names that I have been, mentioning were all now united with faces for her now. And I think that's helpful. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is it so what do you think the trajectory of this program is looking like?
I think it's good. And again, it's because I really love building things. So, and I've built things before, like when I was at Valley in Dublin, I was the performing arts director there.
California, not Ireland, for those of you who might.
Yeah. Although that would have been fun. But anyway, yeah. It was Dublin, California. And that was a performing arts program that had only been an elementary school recorder program and a high school theater program that only had a very small number of students, no music at all. And so, I developed that program and built it into something that I was very proud of. And so, I have a little bit of experience of building something from kind of nothing. We have a really excellent theater program at Monterey. We have a really amazing director of theater arts. Alicia Welch she's brilliant. We have an amazing instrumental arts program at Monterey. Bob Aguilar is, he's perpetual motion. The man is a legend. And so, but they did not have vocal arts. And that was kind of the missing piece to this. They have an amazing dance program. Catherine O'Shea is this, she's so talented, And, but anyway, I recognize I have one choir that is in the bell schedule. I teach 3 sections of beginning piano because that's the only piano I can teach. Like, I mean, if they move on to an intermediate piano class, I'm like, yeah, I can't help you. You know, Bob Aguilar, his instrument in college was piano. He's amazing. So I was like, Bob, I know you don't like teaching beginning piano. I'll teach beginning piano, but you need to know that's where it ends. I can't do anything after that.
Yeah.
And then I teach psych soc. And I think the goal is they see that we're going to have less need for. We have 4 sections of beginning piano. We have a piano lab with 25 keyboards. And that's unheard of. I've never even heard of a school that had that many kids learning to play piano as a part of the curriculum in their education.
I wish Monte Vista had a piano class.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a great need for a piano class.
Yeah.
But can I just say 4 sections of piano probably is an indication there are not enough electives being offered. You know? So as we develop more vocal arts options, I think there's going to be less of a demand for piano. Oh, dear God, please. Can there be less of a demand for piano? And but the Bell schedule is complicated. We have an 8-period block schedule.
You do?
Yeah. We do.
Where do I send the donations? You live in some post-apocalyptic society where you can barely function.
Yeah. It's not dystopian though. It's really not. So it's like, yeah.
No, but but at Monte Vista, it's gonna be.
Well,
they're
okay.
evil. The Monte Vista administration is evil.
No, they're not.
They're out to get us.
You're going to be gone.
Us.
You're graduating. You're graduating.
I have sympathy for my underclassmen compatriots who are under the evil regime of the Monte Vista administration who decided that we're too happy.
Let me just say this though. As a teacher, I love having 90-minute classes. And I love that the bells don't ring as often. I love that students are not like hurried on like cattle from one thing to the next 7 times a day. I mean, there really is a rhythm that is much more manageable with a 4-period-a-day schedule. The jury's out at Monte Vista. As far as I'm concerned, the jury is out in terms of like the rotation thing that they're adding to, because that's not at Monterey. It's like Monday, Thursday, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, Tuesday, Friday, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then Wednesday it's the one that alternates between either an A day or a B day. I've figured out how to make that work. It was weird at first, and I was like, "This is," but I figured out how to make it work. So I feel good about it. It does 2 things. One of the things that it does is it allows for a class that has more breathing room. You know, I mean, I would feel like sometimes at Monte Vista, I had just finished taking attendance when the bell rang, you know, and you're like, bye, see you tomorrow. Gosh, I sure hope I can fit it all in tomorrow after I take attendance, you know? And so, you know, having 90 minutes is really nice.
Dang it, I like block days at Monte Vista. I've always said I like block days, but I like that it's only 2 days out of the week.
Right.
But like those are usually, and sometimes they're painful to get through if you don't like the class. But if you do like the class, those are the best days.
Well, I mean, again, the onus is on the teacher. Like, I mean, as a teacher, you've been given 90 minutes. For heaven's sake, figure out how to make that an interesting 90 minutes. Yeah. Like, you can't just drone on for 90 minutes and expect that to be effective.
You scared me. That shook me to my core. Having to pretend to take notes for 90 whole minutes.
I can't think of anything more miserable. You know, I mean, as an adult, I can't. As a teacher, I can't think of anything more miserable than me talking and expecting notes to be taken for that period of time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel like every single one of my class periods, I get to plan, you know, and I get to plan like different things and sometimes different stations and sometimes different activities and different ways to connect people. And again, it helps that I'm really enthusiastic about my subjects. You know, I love psychology. I love sociology. I love choir. I tolerate piano. And so I've even figured out how to make, I say that, but to be honest, I think I feel insecure about teaching piano. The jury was totally out in my mind about how it works to teach 25 people a keyboard instrument at the same time.
Yeah.
And and as the year has progressed, I think I've reconciled that a little bit. And even though I still have a little bit of a dread, I actually find myself enjoying myself when I'm in the class, you know? And again, part of it's because I just really love my students, you know, and I build relationships with students, and I love it when they have those aha moments, or when they break through, like a hand-eye coordination motor skill thing that they've been working on. Like, those are fun things.
Well, to what extent is piano a class that they're like the academic counselors or whatever, like, you need an elective in order to graduate, and they're like, okay, I'll take piano.
No, it's more like this. You need a VPA elective in order to graduate. You're going to take piano.
Oh.
So it's like, and so sometimes I feel, I get kids that will come in. Okay, so this is one of the things about public school. It's a new semester. I'm teaching beginning piano. We're in the second semester of beginning piano. I have 6 new students. So I've got most of my students who are a semester through beginning piano, and 6 that are starting from scratch.
Yeah, I just jumped into guitar 2.
Okay.
Having never played guitar before.
Mr. Ton loves you. Okay, so
that's the only way that it's going to work out.
Well, it is probably honestly true. Mr. Ton does love you. So that's like, you know, I know that that's going to work. But you know, you immediately get to be like, okay, I got to regroup and I have to figure this out, because, and to be fair, there are probably, I'm not saying anyone at Monterey High School fits this description. In education in general, there are people who just like adults, teachers that go through the motions, and they're just kind of like, yeah, I'm riding this out through retirement. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that a teacher could have kids like that come into their class and they could just be like, I don't care. Yeah. You know, but
I actually relate to them more than I relate to them.
But I feel like I you know, and I think I do have a super overactive sense of responsibility. But I look at those kids coming into my class and I'm like, okay, take a deep breath. We got to jump into the deep end, because I have to teach these kids how to play piano, you know? And, I take it seriously. But, I'll have a kid who will come in and I have one right now. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to be here. And I didn't choose this elective, and I don't want to take this class. And I'm like, okay, well, then we need to move heaven and earth to get you out of here, because you don't want to be here. And honestly, I hope we'll be friends. I hope we'll like say hi to each other when we cross each other in the hallway. But I don't want you here if you don't want to be here. Like, I literally don't want to drag your carcass across like the wasteland of learning piano. It's just like, that sounds horrible. So, yeah. Anyway, I would say the whole block schedule thing is, I work hard to try and make those interesting 90 minutes. And now I love them. Like, and it also affords us the opportunity of having an 8-period bell schedule.
Yeah.
So for kids who are really interested in pursuing an interest a little bit deeper, that they can do that then in a more effective way than when they only have a 7-period bell schedule. So I like that too. So it gets back to like, I've got kids. They could take choir. They were only able to take, there's some kids that wanted to be in choir and it just couldn't fit into their schedule. And there's only one option. So I was like, okay, well, I met kids that really wanted to sing because I was asked to be the music director for the fall show.
And how many people are in your choir or in your
30.
bell schedule?
I have 30 in my bell schedule choir, and they're great, mostly girls, but the guys are fantastic. And the thing that's crazy is these are kids, a lot of them without any musical training at all. I have probably one of the best alto sections I've ever had in a group.
And alto sections are...
Yeah.
Are alto sections.
Yeah. I'm like, and I feel like most arrangers give all the heavy lifting to the altos. Their parts are the least intuitive, and they're usually like, the intervals are like, hard and weird, and, I plunk through notes with my terrible sausage fingers, and, I'm making mistakes all over the place. And within 2 or 3 tries, they've got the part down. And then we sing and they hold the part, and I'm just like, who are you guys? Like, they're rock stars, So that's been really fun. I got to know a ton of kids that were a part of the cast of Peter and the Starcatcher. which was the fall show that was done. It's a prequel to Peter Pan. It's a great show, really, really fun, and it's funny and clever, and so and it's not really a musical. Like there's only a few musical numbers, but there were all these kids that I got to know as a result of that. Found out that so many of them were disappointed they couldn't be in choir, and I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to build a program, I have to figure out how can I make an opportunity for these kids to like sing choral music. So on Tuesday and Thursday mornings before school, from 7 in the morning to 7:50, I'm running 2 programs at the same time. And one of them is a mixed ensemble. They're awesome. They're singing some beautiful music, mostly jazz and more contemporary classical music. And then a show choir. And the show choir really was born out of this enthusiasm of kids that are like a part of the theater program, and they really, really want to do music theater. And so, you know, right now we're learning a piece from Spelling Bee, the musical Spelling Bee, and it's called Pandemonium, and it's fun. And we're going to do a piece that we did from Something Rotten. And I never said anything. And I just asked them, like, guys, give me a list of some songs you want. And one of the songs that was on that list is a musical from Something Rotten. And I was just like, yes, please. Yes, we have to do this. And now I'm thinking, this is a show choir. Like we can fully choreograph this, you know, from beginning to end, which will be so much fun. And I'm not doing any of the choreography because I've got this amazing dance teacher. So she comes in and works with the show choir, develops all the choreography, teaches them the choreography. And now we're in the process of looking for opportunities to compete. And so that's been fun. And then if I wasn't busy enough already, I realized that I've worked my tail end off this year launching a program, and it's been good, and it's been successful and enthusiastic. The district representatives came to my winter show and invited us to open up the all district staff meeting with the national anthem that we had performed for that performance as well. So I took that as like a huge compliment. And so, but I realized next year I'm starting over again with a whole bunch of freshmen that don't know me. And I thought, I don't want to do that. Like I don't. And so what I did was I approached we have a performing arts specialist that works with the district. And so I approached her and I said, I'm not looking for more to do, but we don't have a choral program from our feeder school. And so there is no choral culture from the school that is feeding into our high school, and that has to change, or I'm going to be starting all over again. So now my Tuesday and Thursdays are long days now because I start at 7 in the morning, and after we're done, I go over to Colton Middle School, which is the middle school up the street from our school.
Oh, geez.
And I do an hour and a half rehearsal with a fledgling choral program that I'm starting there. Because if I don't, every year is going to be this uphill battle of trying to get kids to be a part of the program.
Yeah.
Cool thing that happened though, Monterey High School, we did this a couple weeks ago. They take an entire day out of the school year and they have an elective fair. And so every teacher that teaches electives, they set up a booth, a table, whatever, in the bigger of the 2 gyms that we have. And kids' English classes and PE classes come in all day long, and they just go around and look at the elective opportunities. And then a lot of the people who are offering electives will ask kids to sign up if they're interested, and we'll reach out to them. I was hoping, 20 or 30 kids might be interested. We had 140 kids sign up as being interested in the program next year.
Which means like 60 kids who might actually do it.
Maybe. If 60 would be great, if it was 40, it would be great, So, those are the kinds of things that are really encouraging about like, okay, we're building something and it looks like the thing we're building has got a little bit of momentum. And so that's encouraging, but it's still a lot of work. Every now and then I vacillate between being delighted, exhausted, and terrified.
Yeah.
So,
well, how is there not, it seems like, wouldn't there be a lot of continuity with the choir program throughout the years? Because is it just a freshman choir, or why wouldn't?
Yeah, no, but I have a lot of freshmen, which is great. Okay. You know, I have a lot of freshmen. I have students from every single grade, you know, that are in my choir. I would say probably if I were to divide them up, we would find there's probably a few more freshmen than each of the other classes. But my seniors are great too. Like, I mean,
class of 2020 is just the best everywhere.
It's kind of true. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of true. And even at Monterey, it's kind of an epic class, you know? Wow. I mean, they are even kind of an epic class. So
that's what I would say is I don't have school spirit like Monte Vista. Like if there was a competition between Monte Vista and some other school, I would be more aligned with the class of 2020 at that school than like the class of 2022 at Monte Vista or something.
Who?
Yeah. They've got more than...
Who are those kids?
It's such an asymmetrical year to be in. How do you...
Yeah. You know, I will say something that was really, it was so good. And on the one hand, a little bit hard. I think the other thing is, and this is probably not a compliment to my character either, but, like I'm becoming a more known commodity at Monterey High. But, you know, when you come into a new place and you're a complete stranger, you know, like, I mean, no one really knows you. They don't know. I mean, why should they trust me? You know, they don't know me.
Yeah. We should have gotten some of the kids here to write recommendation letters or something.
Hey, that would have been good. You know, but I think, having been at Monte Vista for 4 years and 5 summers, I knew most students, you know, like I knew most students at Monte Vista. So it was a bit of a jolt to my system when I came back and I did the cameo for
the class dance.
Yeah, for the class dance for homecoming, which was such an honor to be asked. And I love Monte Vista's class of 2020 so much. I have so many, like, I don't just consider them students. I have dear friends, you know, that are a part of that class. So again, I felt super honored. And it was a weird thing to be at Monte Vista and to feel known and loved, and then to go the very next day back into utter obscurity, you know, like,
and you wish you could show them, hey guys, check this out.
Yeah. Can I just show you something? Can I show you a little video? You know? So it's just like, no, but I think the thing is, it's like, I don't want that to be my motivation.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it is, but it was weird. I just remember being at Monterey High School on my way between one class and another class and being like, you're a total stranger here. Yeah. Like, no one knows you. So,
nobody's saying hi to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I will say this is cool. And I feel like we have a large Hispanic population at Monterey High School, and it may have something to do with Hispanic culture. But in general, I think I'm a friendly person. And if someone makes eye contact with me, I'll say good morning, you know, and I'll ask people how they are. Without exception, at Monterey High School. And after a while, I was just like, are they teaching them to do this? You know, I would have students that, without exception, they would all say, and how are you? How are you today? And I would just be like, I'm trying to think if, other than students that I knew well at Monte Vista, I don't ever remember having a student ask me how I was. You know, I think it's just a pleasantry, you know, like a lot of times it's just a pleasantry. So I was so interested that I actually asked a couple of students one day. I'm like, okay, I'm just kind of curious about this. Yeah. Because I it's nice, and I'm not complaining at all. I'm just saying it's nice. And then I had a couple of girls, and they were Hispanic, and they were like, oh, like my parents would be really angry with me if to us, it's an expression of respect if an adult has taken the time to ask how you are. That's respect to respond. How are you? I want to know how you are too, you know? And I was like, that's cool. I'm a
serial not ask back person. Well, I did it today in the lunch line. Whoever it was, I don't know any of the lunch people's names, but who scanned my fingerprint in the lunch line. They said, oh, hi Frank, how are you doing today? I said, good. And I said, how about you? for the first time in probably forever. And they said, I'm doing good. And I was like, that's good. And then I was kind of like, whoa,
Well,
that was a new thing.
Okay, but this is the thing. I don't know that I ever really thought about it. Because I started thinking in my own encounters with people, because I get up early and I go to the gym before I go to work, and there's a lot of people. You just get to know the same people that are working out at the same time, and I know first names of people, and I started realizing people will ask me how I am, and I'm not responding with, and how are you?
Yeah.
And now that I've started to realize this dynamic, I'm just I'm being really intentional about okay, I want to demonstrate the same courtesy, because I just see it as a social courtesy.
Yeah.
If you're going to ask how I am, then it seems super narcissistic for me to not care enough to ask how you are.
Let me tell you.
Well, and for the most part, people say fine. That's what people say. And hopefully that's true. That'd be great. I hope it's true.
Yeah.
But I think we call it a pleasantry, probably because it should be pleasant. So.
Yeah, it's one way to just one level up your social skills.
Yeah.
Just make sure to say, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Because then people think, wow, they care. He cares about me. She cares about me.
Well, and I think the reality is, I flatter myself that I think I do. I think I am a human being that does care about the condition of the human beings around me.
Yeah.
And so it's it seems a very small thing to demonstrate that by just responding with a courteous and how are you?
Yeah.
So.
What always freaks me out, this is one of the worst, I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this is one of the worst things to ever happen, is when you think you're good friends with someone and then you're talking to someone else who hasn't spent as much time with them, who's just telling you about all of their, we've got 3 people in this situation, right? Person number 2 is telling you all about person number 1 and all their personal issues and stuff, the stuff that you feel like you should know because you're better friends with person 1 than person 2 is, and you just realize that you don't know them as well as other people just know their acquaintances.
Right.
And so I'll express that to people, and they say, well, Frank, you care about people, right? Just ask people how they're doing. And I'm like, no, that's weird. Hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? Are you okay?
Are you okay?
And that's not my place.
Right.
I'm not gonna be a forced upon free counselor or free, at least, listener.
But don't you think there are I mean, obviously there are levels of intimacy that happen within the context of friendships,
Yeah.
But we would say acquaintances are acquaintances, and hopefully if they're exchanging pleasantries and they're sincere, I hope, that they're sincere. But then as we develop friendships, we do find opportunity. I think if I were to, we're friends. If I were to encounter you and I was to read from your countenance that there was something wrong,
yeah.
I'd dig, I would prod. I would want to prod. But if you were more an acquaintance, I would want to demonstrate that I cared, but I would probably just maybe throw it out there and see if it got bit, see if throw the hook out there and see if it was, because I can think of people that I don't know as well that I do care about, and I will demonstrate that I care in saying, hey, I don't want to put myself in your business or anything like that. But I mean, if you feel like you need someone to help you process some things, I'd be happy to make myself available, and that's not jumping into the middle of their business. It's just basically saying, here's an invitation. And if you want to take me up on it, great. And if you don't, because sometimes intimacy is built when someone does take advantage of that.
Yeah. I don't feel like that's my place.
Right.
For other people. I feel much more comfortable talking about camels.
What do you know about camels?
I know very little, but for my entire life, I've had this very strong inclination. I hate 2-humped camels.
Why?
And 1-humped camels are totally awesome. Whenever I would see in some children's book or something a 2-humped camel, I went, what's wrong with that camel? Just people, I don't know. I've always felt the need to take a side on this issue.
other than the phenomenon of there being both one-humped
Yeah.
and two-humped camels, I don't think I've given it much thought.
People make a big deal out of it. There are one-humped camels and there are two-humped camels. And the implication there is that you have to be on one side or the other. And I decided from a very young age, I'm on team one-humped camel. Two-humped camels are taking all the water from the one-humped camels.
Right. Because
We
they've
need to
got
redistribute
that extra
the water.
hump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe they're a little more selfish. I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, no. And it's like, how do two people ride them? Or if there's one person riding the camel, do they only ride the front hump or do they ride in the middle of the two humps?
Yeah, do they get like they straddle in between?
Then you can't. Then you have to look to the side of the camel in order to see what's going on. It just is
Right.
not a.
No, it's not a good design.
Yeah. It just looks bad. I don't like two humped camels.
All right. Well, I am going to respect your opinion about camels, Frank.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you've explained with good reason, like you've given rational
Yeah.
explanation.
That's rationalization of an utterly irrational emotion. That's me trying to figure. If I irrationally liked two humped camels, I would come up with a million reasons why
Right.
one humped camels suck. Like they only have one hump.
Right.
Two humped camels.
Yeah,
have
what's
got
wrong with them?
Twice the hump.
Right. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a camel
Not
in
in
a
real
zoo or anything like that?
I don't think so. I went to a zoo when I was very young.
Right.
Maybe I don't remember. But
You need to go back to a zoo, maybe.
I've been to a zoo, but there weren't camels.
Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure I've seen camels in a zoo. I've never seen them in the wild.
Yeah.
I've seen elephants in the wild.
You have?
And not in Africa, in India.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're Indian elephants.
Indian elephants.
I've always preferred Indian elephants to African elephants.
Yeah. So not only were there wild Indian elephants, but then there were like tame Indian elephants that they were using for like construction purposes.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, I felt like I needed to have animal preferences, evidently. I just realized, you just reminded me that there are Indian elephants and African elephants. And I
Yeah.
remember being a kid, like reading those little DK, like the children's books that were informational and just thinking, God, I hate those African elephants. They're not
Really?
Indian elephants.
You don't like the Africans more than I think most people like the Africans better.
Yeah, so I that's probably just because it's cliched and I want to go against the grain.
Okay.
The Indian elephants just seem cooler.
Well, they're not as big, and their ears aren't as big, and they're built a little differently. And again, so see, here I am. I'm like, oh, I don't know that I've ever had a strong opinion about one being superior to the other.
Yeah, it's such a useless thing to have a strong opinion about.
Okay, so Frank, I'm just going to say this too. You do harbor some opinions.
Yes.
You do have one or two.
Yeah, a couple.
Or without 1 or 2,000 opinions.
Yeah, people always ask me. No, people don't always ask me, but when I do get asked, "What's your opinion on X political issue or something?" I'm just like, I don't know. I don't care. I'm fine. But then when you ask me about one humped versus two humped camels,
You're passionate.
yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I have slightly misaligned priorities.
I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe if your priorities go a long way toward an entertainment value. How's that?
Yeah, probably. I think that's. I'm just tapping the vein because nobody really cares about camels. If we have a serious disagreement about camels, we can still be friends.
I think people in the Middle East care.
Yeah, but I don't think that there's. You know, there's a Far Side cartoon where they're in a bar in the Middle East and it's stereotypical looking Middle Eastern guys with the curved swords that get wider at the tip.
The scimitars.
Yeah, and they the caption is the great fight breaks out between team one humped camels and team two humped camels, and they're on opposite sides of the bar about to have this big brawl. And I swear I had strong opinions before I read that
Wait a
comic.
minute. This is fascinating to me. So, like, my mind is being a little bit blown here because, like, you know, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I love the way Frank thinks, and I'm always kind of like delighted by the things that I discover about what you think. But I'm like, like, I mean, that there's a person that, like, you know, draws this distinction between one hump and two hump camels, and then to be like, wait, this is much bigger. This is bigger than I thought it was.
How have you not decided
I don't
which
know.
team you're on?
I had no idea I was supposed to choose.
Apparently you are.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of feel like I need to be Switzerland in the camel department. I'm sorry.
Moderate.
Yeah. I'm probably Switzerland in the elephant department.
You're
too.
like those people who say, you know, I think that both Republicans and Democrats have good and bad things to say.
I am one of those people who think that. I've been independent for like 30 years, so yeah. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, but we're not going to talk about political
I'm
things.
even worse than those people, for the record. I think I'm basically one of those, both sides are stupid, man. It's all dumb. I'm just less.
That's probably true as well.
Yeah. I'm just less evangelist about it. I just try not to care, because a long time ago I used to care about politics. Then I realized that I'm too stupid to have a correct opinion. So
this is the thing, though. I mean, I don't know that people have to be like crazily well versed to have enlightened political opinions. And this is going to sound like, maybe this is not, because I'm not going to make a political statement right now. Other than this, as a person of faith, I have, I probably, it is my opinion that that the Bible is the greatest gift from a literary standpoint to humankind. My personal opinion, and as a faith-based person, but second only is the Constitution. And again, I think I've been fascinated by the Constitution for most of my ability to understand what it was, and then to begin studying it. I think in civics in middle school, to be like realizing that there are all these different ways human beings have tried to govern themselves for thousands of years, and then looking at this document that has been so remarkable in terms of like having relevance, interpretational relevance for a couple of hundred years. It blows me away. And when I look at it, it's not difficult for me to have political opinions, not about which camp I agree with, but in terms of like the value of that document and what it could mean for people if they could be less the selfish brutes that they are. When you see people who have been elected to an office utterly and completely disregard their oath to a document, that discourages me, because I feel like, wow, you had the privilege of being elected by a constituency to represent your community, and you made an oath to a document that is a brilliant document that probably has the potential of being greater than any other document in the history of mankind in terms of like how human beings could live together with peace. And you trashed it for some stupid political agenda. It's just like, those are the things. And I'm way oversimplifying. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are listening right now being like, he's way oversimplifying. Okay, I probably am. But for me, it comes back to the Constitution and what a remarkable document it is. And I feel like most of the time when people are apolitical, they're apolitical because they have never had the opportunity of exploring the wonder of a document. I'm teaching sociology right now. I mean, we're talking about the dynamics of culture and society, and how human beings are grouped together, how we naturally group together. And the United States of America has been referred to as the great experiment for many, many years. And it is. And it can only be a successful experiment to the degree that people will cooperate with a multicultural dynamic, because the Constitution demands that we would be respecting of a multicultural dynamic. It's weird. There are very few countries in the world that are an umbrella over so many cultures, the way we are. And it's counterintuitive. It shouldn't work. By human nature, it shouldn't work. I hope it will.
It kind of does, I feel like. America's not terrible.
It kind of does. I get discouraging, and I'm not discouraged by America. I'm discouraged by the waves of human nature that I have observed as a historian. And so when you start to see nativism, and some fairly brutal nationalism happening all over the place. That to me looks like a wave of history, not just like a couple of blips on the globe. And when you see that, you're like, gosh, that's going to head towards something that's really dangerous. Like a bunch of people are probably going to die because of that. That's really unfortunate. More than unfortunate, tragic, you know? So I've mentioned this to classes before. I tend to be a bit of a news junkie until I can't anymore. And then I have to kind of take a fast from the news because I just can't anymore.
Yeah.
And then I run back to the news.
You keep coming back. It's like...
Keep coming back. I will say this, though. I can't believe I'm even admitting this in public. I've started watching Hallmark movies. I am so humiliated that is, but I realize, like, I don't really enjoy them. They're so darn predictable that there's something very comforting about like watching something and knowing exactly how it's going to end, knowing pretty much what every beat is going to be in this narrative. There's something really comforting to me right now about that. And I'm like, okay, I would love it for the world to get back to a place where I don't have to watch Hallmark movies for entertainment. So, because they're not very good. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Hallmark. I apologize, but your movies are not good. But I am watching them.
They have some value in the world,
apparently.
Maybe that's
for me. They are right now. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like I don't know. So,
yeah, I'm surprised often by how many people will, and this is not what you just said, but it's kind of related. How many people will say at the end of the day, I want to see a fairly predictable story where the good guys win in the end and it's all happy and there's a typical climactic arc to the narrative. There's a
story arc, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, really? That's because I always have the perspective that you should be trying to innovate with art, and if you want to tell a story, you should tell a story that comments on reality in a unique and in a stimulating way.
Yeah. I think, and again, it's probably going to tip my hand to my own worldview, but I think human beings are hungry for that story arc. Yeah. Like, I think if there's a human nature dynamic that we watch a world on a regular basis where the good guys don't win, and people, nice people, are oppressed and even tormented. And it's so funny because my son Devin, who is a professional actor, he and I think very differently about entertainment. I think he feels very strongly that there is a value to entertainment that is a representation of reality. A lot of people feel that way.
I feel that way.
Yeah. And I get it. I totally get it. But when you're a news junkie and you are consuming reality all day, every day, doggone it, I don't want that to be my entertainment. Mm-hmm. Like what I want for my entertainment is I want a story arc that is going to make me feel hopeful about human beings again.
Yeah. And one thing, and I think it has to do with the fact that I've been programmed by inundating myself with pretentious consumption of art and people commenting on media, on entertainment media in a way that's really, trying to be all big brain and pretentious and not really conventional. But I'm surprised by the amount of people where it's not that you corner them and they're like, is anyone listening the way that you did? But it sort of feels like that, where maybe I'm just not expecting it, and maybe it feels like more of a confiding moment than it actually is. But they're like, yeah, I like a good and evil story. I like there to be good guys and bad guys. Yeah. I get hyped as soon as the bad guys aren't actually that bad, and as soon as the good guys aren't actually that good. I hate good and evil stories.
And I will say this, so I'll concede, and I will agree with you, because I can think of some examples of films that I've seen where the bad guy was only bad.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not satisfying, because it's not reality, because no human being is the embodiment of evil, and no human being is the embodiment of angelic behavior. So like there is something really compelling about the reality of the human condition and the human struggle. I think though, we are interested in people like, I'm hearing the term used a lot. John Meacham is a historian and author. And he wrote a book that I can't remember the title of it right now. But it refers to our better angels, and I'm hearing that term a lot right now, appealing to our better angels or demonstrating our better angels. And I feel like there is something human beings like we want to believe that we can be better than the selfish brutes that we probably are trying not to be all day, every day, And so I think when we see a narrative and there is a hero and that hero is struggling with his own humanity or her own humanity, and in the midst of that struggle, they still accomplish something that looks selfless, sacrificing, and benefits someone else besides themselves. There's something that's appealing, I think, to human beings about that, because I think we want to believe human beings are capable of it.
Yeah, and if we like a person, which could then be a fictional character, we want to see the good in them. There's nothing happier than someone realizing that sentence came out wrong. There are very few things that are more satisfying than watching someone dang it, now I forgot that word. Watching someone reach their potential, right? And so if you see potential in someone to be the hero of the story and they actually achieve that and you like them and you're rooting for them,
right?
That's really satisfying.
Well, I think too, I think about, this was years ago, and so I'm going to probably like butcher the accuracy of the narrative, but I remember, I think our daughter Brooke had been born. She was very, very young. She was very little. And Mrs. Fleming and I went to see a movie. I think it was a Batman movie. It was a long time ago. And I remember the Joker character was represented as being just almost single-dimensionally evil.
Yeah.
There was nothing redeeming at all. There was nothing likable at all. And I remember just leaving the film after it was done. There were a lot of explosions, a lot of special effects, and I'm sure it was very satisfying to a lot of people. But I remember leaving and just thinking, yeah, that's that was lacking. Like that really lacked. I'm like, of course I wanted him to be defeated because he was the embodiment of evil. So yeah. I'm glad he got defeated in the story. But I felt like there was nothing. There was nothing hopeful, about that character. And where I had seen it was a Disney movie. I'm terrible with two mice that were like spies. I can't remember.
Rescuers.
Yes. The Rescuers. And I think it was The Rescuers Down Under.
Yeah.
Was the film that I remember seeing. And the bad guy was a baddie. He was a baddie for sure. But he had a lot of redeeming qualities, and the storytellers went to some pains to show the humanity of the bad guy.
Yeah. And
he was still a bad guy. I didn't want him to win. I wasn't rooting for him in any way, but he was way more interesting to watch.
Absolutely.
And I remember not, quelling, from whenever his scenes were. It was just like, no, this is interesting, and so having said, I like the story arc with the good versus evil. There has to be some gray lines, there has to be some gray areas, or it's not interesting and it's not realistic.
Yeah. And sometimes when I conceive storylines that really stray away from that structure and have a real potential to leave people dissatisfied, but it's more like reality and it's more of a complex and nuanced idea or emotion being communicated or something, I think, am I just kidding myself by thinking that this is better? Or do really what I want to see is a relatively simple escape from reality story? Am I just trying to convince myself that I'm smarter and more advanced a consumer or creator of art than most people by trying to break through the boundaries, or is this just what works?
Right.
And do I actually want to see that?
Well, I think there is definitely a market for the good versus evil conventional story arc. I think that the majority of people feel satisfied when they encounter that kind of narrative. I think also there are certainly narratives that are being written and developed that are the kind of the anti-hero or the anti-narrative. They're hard work.
Yeah.
You have to work really, really hard to separate yourself from the compulsion of the good versus evil typical story arc. I mean, I do feel like there's something in human beings that want that narrative. We want to believe it.
Yeah. It's like if something doesn't leave you feeling happy, do you actually like it? Or are you just convincing yourself you like it?
Right. Or, you've got enough of an appreciation for the art form. I can think of a lot of things that I've watched that I had a really high level of appreciation for the art form. I don't necessarily want to watch it again.
Yeah. If a movie that with a dissatisfying conclusion and a dissatisfying method, because that's the point, does its job right, you're not gonna enjoy it. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it's trying to do ultimately, is tell something that sucks.
So but this is the thing though. I'm like, why do I want to spend $15 to experience that?
But on the other hand, I think that there are a lot of examples of art that is sad and dissatisfying and exposes the dark realities of life that you still enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, but again, very frequently the thing that we're drawn to, even in those stories, are when we see human beings that rise above something.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, there's so many stories about loss. Losing a loved one, losing a parent, losing a child, losing.
Yeah.
Any of those things that are a horror to most people to consider in their real lich experience.
The amount of fictional characters with dead parents.
Oh, Disney is... Yeah, I mean...
Were Walt Disney's parents dead?
I don't know.
Did they die early?
They must have.
Yeah.
Because,
That's just a requirement, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. There has to be a missing parent. Yeah, for sure. But I think that, when I say I want that arc that's super satisfying, that can happen in a film that is even characterized by profound loss. But what we want to see is we want to see the development of the character that has experienced the loss, and we want to see how did they come to reconcile that.
Yeah.
And did they survive that? And how did they survive that? And could they thrive again at some point in time? I think every single one of us in some way wants to have a cathartic experience as we're watching those things and being like, okay, I don't ever want to imagine that I would experience something like that. But if I did experience something like that, I want to know, is there a path to health, emotional health, after that? Sometimes that's what it offers.
And because we have such a drive to say yes in that type of a story or something, is art doing more harm than good than giving people by giving people false expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends upon whether or not they are false. I mean, if it's pure fiction, you can make up anything. I think sometimes what we're really interested in is seeing a representation of a real story of someone overcoming something like that. And then we're like, okay, well, that's more than just a satisfying story. That happened. That person really did overcome that difficult thing.
That's just propaganda by the optimists.
Do you think?
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of Jews in Germany before World War II that were total jerks.
Yeah.
And so they were used as the examples.
Right. And I would say there were plenty of stories, Holocaust stories, that are not the ones that get published, that are not particularly complimentary to the survivors. And so because they're human stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the problem, is that's an interesting story to tell, but as soon as you try to tell it, why did you select that? Why did you select the Holocaust survivor took their traumatic experience and were still a horrible person?
Right.
What kind of message are you sending?
Right. Yeah, but I think the thing is, though, I mean, there might be a very small audience of realists that want to see that.
Yeah.
But most people they want to go see the film of the person that overcame.
Yeah.
And I think it's because inside a lot of people want to think that there is the capacity, if they were in a similar situation, they could overcome.
Yeah. but this is just the impression I've gotten from our culture, and it's really eaten away at me at times, or ate away. Eaten or ate? I don't know.
Eaten away.
The idea...
It has eaten away.
That this idea of the depressed genius, right? That super smart people are cynical and sad. That kind of makes me feel dumb and guilty for... I'm sad. I'm not a particularly happy person,
Right, yeah.
but I really don't think I'm that cynical.
Yeah.
I think I actually have kind of a positive outlook on the world around me, and apparently the world sucks, and I'm just not smart enough to comprehend how horrible life is. Because I'm trying to hold on to this idea that I might be happy and that life is fruitful and means something. But
I think, I mean, I wonder, I do think I'm happy. I think I am a happy person.
yeah.
I think I'm an optimistic person.
Yeah.
I think I put the best face on things. Like it's a discipline of wanting to put the best face on things. But at the same time, I think I'm very cynical. And I think there's an inner dialogue that happens with me all the time that has to do with the cynical part of me and the optimistic part of me. And I suppose at some point in time, there's a reconciliation of just reality.
Yeah.
Because there is justification for some cynical attitudes.
For sure.
Yeah. And there is also justification for optimism.
Yeah. But I'm just terrified by the idea that life is actually worse than I think it is, and that's because I'm not smart enough to actually do the computations in my head. I'm not enlightened enough to know enough about how much the world sucks and how much my life is going to suck to fully comprehend the despair that I'm about to feel, and that all the really intelligent people look down upon me as one of the troglodytes who still thinks that there's a little bit of hope, right? And so what's interesting...
But you are so smart, Frank. I mean, you are such a smart person.
I'm not that smart. I swear to God, I'm not that smart.
Well, okay. All right.
Okay?
All right.
And look,
Who are you comparing yourself to?
I'm comparing myself to...
Stop talking about the class of 2020. Who are you comparing yourself to?
What I'm saying is that I don't feel like I'm among the ranks of the super intelligent people. Like I'm of above average intelligence. I think that's pretty darn fair to say.
Yeah.
I'm smarter than 50% of people at least, but I don't think that I am among the real geniuses with the sheer brain computing power. Like IQ test type questions
Right.
and brain puzzles, I just don't have enough RAM, for lack of a better term. I just kind of suck at it. And I think that people view me as more smart than I actually am. Because I have a reputation for being intelligent, when in reality, I think that a lot of the things that I say and the things that I espouse and the takes that I come up with on the world are actually pretty simple and not that nuanced. And the amount of times when I've felt frustrated by other people's lack of intelligence is dwarfed by the amount of times when I've realized how much of a simpleton I was in assuming something or coming to some conclusion.
I wonder, though, I mean, if I could turn that into something that is a compliment to your character. I'm going to.
Okay.
And that is, I think there's a dynamic of humility that is probably a good thing. I mean, how do we rate and rank intelligence anyway? I feel like, again, teaching psychology and having this be a part of a curriculum, when we look at the way human beings have been creating quotients of intelligence, it's a super imperfect art.
Yeah.
And it's a very controversial art.
Yeah.
A very controversial science. We're even questioning whether or not the questions that we create have any kind of equity in terms of like really being able to determine intelligence.
Well, what I've heard is that the strongest correlation between your income is your IQ. Like a Stanford binary, like your standard IQ test is a better indicator than your parents' income from when you were a kid. And so apparently there's a lot of credence to IQ tests and the like. And the fact of the matter is, and look, I'm not one of these hardcore IQ people who's like, your IQ determines everything, because they're mostly racist for whatever reason.
There's certainly an inequity in a lot of those. Yeah.
But what I am saying is that dumb people tend to do poorly on IQ tests, and smart people tend to do pretty well on IQ tests, and average people tend to get hundreds.
Right.
You know, there's something to it, and that scares me because my IQ is not that high. I've taken online IQ tests of varying degrees of thoroughness and varying degrees of probable credence, and I'm not in super upper percentiles.
Well, I would say this though, and again, I don't know. Yes, I think that in general speaking, you can look at numbers and say perhaps this person has a higher potential for intelligence, whatever it means. So when we're talking, like, what's the value of intelligence? Does it have to do with making choices? Does it have to, like, what, I mean, what is a monetary value to intelligence?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I will say this, though. I find that some people who are innately intelligent are drawn to experiences in education where they want to become more and more educated. Many people that find themselves in those circumstances where they're becoming more and more educated people, their options in terms of their, what their vocations, start looking like they're going to be teachers. I'm not entirely sure how intelligent that is. I mean, if you're looking at, hey, I spent $60,000 on a master's degree and I'm making $60,000 a year. You know, it's just like, that's not a wise fiscal choice, you know? But you couldn't have got that education without a degree of intelligence.
Yeah. And, well, okay, in teachers' defense, all you teachers out there, don't know who you might be.
Defend us, Frank. Defend us.
It's an important job that needs to be done. And if you're good at it, you should be, to some extent, you should be good at it. If that's like going to be the thing that you're going to be best at, we need good teachers. There's not enough of them to go around.
But they are, I mean, certainly in our culture, in our society, they're not rewarded fiscally, like they are in other cultures, So, I mean, that I find ironic. I think too, but I know for myself, I've done other things. I've done other things that made more money. But I've never done anything that was as rewarding. And so it's like, at the end of the day, what do I enjoy more? Living a life of poverty. No, I love, I love getting to have fascinating conversations with young men and young women every single day. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess the thing is that not everyone looks at it that way.
No, apparently. Well, it depends upon what you teach.
Yeah.
Like, I'm awfully glad I didn't teach math. We could go on a math rant.
Ooh.
I mean, I know I only need to feed it a little bit, and
I've actually softened on the math people since maybe freshman, sophomore year.
Sophomore year, you were pretty rough on the math people.
It was because I was in a math class.
Oh, okay. All right. And I do remember when you were no longer in a math class. What a happy day that was for you. Yeah.
No, the way I think that I reduced my risk of heart attacks the day that I told Miss Sokol, that's no math classes in all 7 periods. Not a single math class. It's just like the reduced tension in my body.
Yeah, this is the thing though. Having had the opportunity now of proctoring Lucas with a couple of Stanford math classes, and watching mathematical processes that I will never understand, and remembering things that Theo Meyer said about the elegance of mathematics, I'm intrigued not intrigued enough to invest any time in it, but intrigued to the degree that I think, did I miss something? And I don't think I missed it because I was stupid. I think I missed it because an educational process was ineffective. And that, as an educator and as a person who cares about educational efficacy, that bothers me.
Oh, I think in America, at least, we teach English a lot better than we teach math.
I think so too.
I think because in first grade, you can write about what happened over the weekend on the little piece of paper with the space for your drawing and then the lines with the dotted line in between to differentiate
I
your
still
capital
use
and lowercase
those.
letters.
No, I don't.
I cannot write lowercase j's.
You can't?
I can't do it.
You
I
mean
try.
cursive or printing?
Printing. I can't write anything in cursive.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then we don't teach it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
For the better, cursive is
I
obsolete.
love cursive.
Yeah.
It's so much
That's
faster.
because you're experienced.
All right. Okay.
I've realized this. All of my J's have been capital J's. Like subject is SUBJECT when I print. And so
I'm trying to think if I've ever seen anything you've printed. Like, I mean, because, we were a part of a one-to-one iPad community. I don't think I've ever seen anything you've done that wasn't digital.
you can count the J's on something no, I'm trying to learn how to write lowercase J's because I literally can't. They look like V's with a dot on one side of them. But you can spot all the J's in something that I've handwritten really quickly because they stand out because they're bigger than the lowercase letters around them.
It's a trademark.
No, it's just me being bad.
Do you like how I turned that into something positive, though?
Yeah, I'm going to be like, Mr. Fleming, I can barely switch lanes. When I try, I look over and then I look over to check my blind spot and then my hands go with me and I go into the other lane anyway. You're like, it's a trademark.
It's a trademark.
Yeah, it's
your
a
trademark
compliment to your character.
It's your trademark driving. It's probably going to kill you, but
Classic Frank. Anyway, what were we talking about? Okay, yeah.
We're talking about intelligence.
From the first time you're in a language class, you get to write about stuff,
right?
And you get to express yourself. Whereas I was told, oh, math is gonna get fun. Don't worry, math sucks now, but it's gonna get fun. And then I kept on getting told that until I was in pre-calculus.
Lies. They're all lies.
I was a sophomore in high school. And it's like, when is it going to get fun? And apparently when you're, I don't know, in grad school,
right?
Maybe it starts to get fun. But after all this foundation gets laid down, and I guarantee you that there are ways to re-swizzle the way that we think about math education to make it cool.
Right.
There are so many interesting math problems that are easy to understand the problem, but difficult to find the answer.
Well, I mean, I have to believe that there is a dynamic of aptitude. There has to be with any, any particular discipline. There are some people that their aptitude is higher for the grammatical approach to language acquisition. It's absurd because no one learns their first language from a grammatical approach.
Yeah.
Your parents did not sit you down and start talking about predicates and subjects and predicates. That never happened.
I'm going to be such a horrible parent. That's probably going to be me.
You are going to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
you are. No, I'm like, no, you are going to.
I am going to do that. Well, after I go, all right, what's this note? What is that? That's like a B. That's a B. All right, what color do you see? Red. Good.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. For the record, I know that there are people who see notes as colors. I am not one of them. I'm sorry.
I think that I can. You know what we did today in AP Music Theory? And now, of course, I'm talking about singing and ear training again, which is it's too much of this podcast. But today in AP Music Theory, me, Lucas, and Maddie, who are the only three people in the class, and sort of Dr. Daner, were on an ear training website. And we decided to do a perfect pitch test, which, for the record, if you know your intervals, perfect pitch tests are fairly easy. You just have to get one note right, and then from there you're good.
Yeah.
But when you have three people trying to do it once and singing out loud, be like, okay, remember that this is an F, this is an F. I can't sing. But when you have three people doing similar things, to all figuring out their own way to have the relative pitch to keep going, it gets really difficult. And so we would have to reset a lot. We would completely forget what the last note sounded like, and then we had a new note. And every single time I was able to sing it and think, how does that feel in my throat? And I got it right. My vocal range based perfect pitch is actually pretty good. And
That's impressive.
I'll bet you that I could train myself to be infallible at it if I really worked at it.
Do you want to be infallible at it?
Yes.
Then you should.
Now, I have such...
You can take it on the road?
I have such messed up ideas for my... how I'm going to train myself to have better ear training, because I just... Okay, let me explain to you my plight in life. I'm colorblind.
Are you?
I am. Those Ishihara plate tests with the dots with the numbers in them, I can't read the numbers.
Huh.
Everyone else can. It's a 23, you idiot. Can you see it right there? It's a 23, my stupid little sister. I'm like, 23, 74, 42, 27. It's just a bunch of dots.
Yeah.
I can't read it. I'm not colorblind enough to read reverse colorblind tests, because I've done heavy research into this. And reverse colorblind tests are hard to do because you're dealing with people with fewer cones than normal color-sighted people. So you have to rely on luminance clues, and you have to fill an image with noise. And I don't want to get into the specifics of how to...
Just for a second. If you're watching this right now, I hope you realize that this conversation indicates that he is of a higher intelligence than the average person. Go ahead.
I'm just repeating phrases that I read on Reddit because I was curious one night. Okay.
Yeah, but you understand them. Go ahead. Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into the specifics because I went into a rabbit hole one very late school night about how to theoretically design a reverse colorblindness test, and they have some, and you'll be on Reddit like r/colorblindness, and you'll see one, and it's a reverse colorblind test. It's like, what is this? And then everyone in the comments is like, yes, I can clearly see a circle, and all of my normally color-sighted friends like, I showed my wife this and she had no idea what it was, but I can clearly see a circle. And I can't even see the circle because I'm barely colorblind.
Oh.
I'm just colorblind enough to not read the Ishihara plate tests, but I'm not colorblind enough to read reverse colorblindness tests.
Well, you know that both Devin and Colin are colorblind. And colorblindness runs in Mrs. Fleming's family.
Yeah.
Both of her brothers are colorblind. Her father was colorblind.
I think that it's such a sure, if you want to be a pilot or something, or if you want to work in a field that requires precise detection of color, sure, colorblindness matters. But other than that, it's such a non-issue. I get through life just fine being a disabled person, with colorblindness, and yet it's so commonly discussed and tested in our society. And my paranoia makes me think that it's some radical feminist invasion of our education system because women are almost never colorblind.
It's a conspiracy.
I think it's conspiracy to poke holes in masculinity.
Yeah.
That's but even so, get this, okay?
Congratulations, ladies.
At PCCS, at Pacific Coast Charter School, where I was quasi homeschooled through for a lot of my elementary school years, one day when we were all at our weekly classes there, they had this eye specialist come in. And I don't know if it was for educational purposes because it didn't give a lecture or anything, or if this is a genuine state of California, eye doctors and stuff. And for the record, you don't need to be an eye specialist to really do what he did, which we went into a room of about like 3 or 4 people at a time. We took the Ishihara plate tests, and if one of us wore glasses, like my friend, I would have been in 2nd grade. My friend wore glasses, and he got asked, when did you start wearing glasses? What's your experience with that? Like, very broad questions. And then I had to sit there and be like, 12. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. Because the first one is just obvious. Nobody can mess up the 12 one, which is just pink and orange. And so I got home. No, I didn't get home. I was in the car with my mom. My mom was driving us around. We were going to get burritos or something. And she goes, oh, Frank, so I heard on the radio that you're colorblind. I'm like, what? So, yeah, this guy who was at apparently he was at PCCS. They had him on local AM radio announcing the medical details of these 7-year-old kids, and that Frank Hurley is colorblind.
What?
And I was like, this is public humiliation.
Wait, hold on a second. I'm pretty sure that violates some pretty standard...
I don't know what... I'm trying to remember this as accurately as I can. And so people have to realize that administering Ishihara plate tests for colorblindness is kind of traumatizing. Yeah. There's this video on YouTube of them demonstrating what a normal test administration looks like, which it's super simple. You flip the pages on the book, and if they can see the numbers, then they can see the freaking numbers, right?
Right.
And this kid who this is an example of a pass. Like, it's in New Zealand, so I'll try to do a New Zealand accent. I can't do New Zealand, so I'm just going to do it in this accent because it more accurately portrays what it feels like to watch the video. She's like, okay, Johnny, what is this number? He's like, 5. Good. Oh, so good, Johnny. Next number, 15. Wow. So good. You've done amazing so far. Okay, next number, 24. Wow, that's right. It is a 24. Do you realize that the next kid up there who has to go up and fail that test and not see the numbers is be like, what, you sure you don't know what it is? No, it's just a bunch of dots. And so now you're publicly humiliating me.
Right.
And so, like, I'm colorblind, right? I have horrific musical ears. I have zero musical talent as far as being able to, like, I have to fight tooth and nail to have any semblance of ear training or musical detection, which I've worked to the point that I have some.
You have worked hard. You have more than some. I think you're talented. But I think you're very talented.
The point is that I've had to work. I don't think I have any sort of aptitude for hearing music. There are people who are worse than me, who were worse off than me.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I have any kind of a talent or an aptitude in that area. And so I'm condensing all of these things, and I'm just worried that I can't view the world or take in the world sensorily in a nuanced way. And that scares me. And I just want, and this is why I'm so obsessed with ear training, is I want to be able to hear a bunch of notes in succession and tell you what the chords are under it and what scale degrees those notes are. And I want to be able to have that because I don't have perfect pitch. I'm colorblind and all this. Because this leaves me, who do I get to mess with? I have nothing. I have no skills that other people can't do. Zero. Right? The only thing that I can do is walk up to a blind person and be like, how many fingers am I holding up? They're like, I don't know, dude. I'm blind. I go, it's 2. Hey, guys. Hey, excuse me. Do you know how many numbers this is? Do you know how many fingers I'm holding up? Yeah, it's 2. See? It's 2. It's 2. It's right in front of your face, you dummy. Like, and that's messed up because they're blind.
Right.
But people do that freely with us colorblind people.
True.
They're just like, hey, isn't this a 25? Yeah, it's clearly a 25, Frank. How do you know? It's right there. It's a 25. I have had literal nightmares where I'm driving and the road signs are Ishihara plate tests, and I can't read which exit I have to get off of.
Oh my gosh. I will say this. I have thought on occasion about colorblindness, and I think in terms of how important color is to me.
Sorry to interrupt you, but in freshman biology, which, again, radical fourth wave feminist invasion of the education system. Why do students need to know about colorblindness? It's totally useless information. But we spent like 3 days on it in freshman biology. And Ms. D'Souza shows us a picture of normal vision. It's a landscape. It's somewhere in Scotland or something with a bunch of flowers and hills in the background and blue sky. So it's this colorful landscape image. This is what it looks like if you have normal vision. And then she switches the image. This is what it looks like if you have
colorblindness.
The first degree of colorblindness.
Okay.
And I don't detect any change in the image. It looks like the same picture to me, but then everyone else in the class goes, oh, that must be so depressing. I heard someone say, oh my God, that must be so depressing.
Well, how could it be depressing if you don't have a point of reference to begin with?
Well, I'm just saying, But
this is the reason when I say color's important to me, mm-hmm. I'm talking about color from a professional standpoint, because aside from being a teacher and before I was a teacher, I was an environmental designer. And so like a huge part of my job was color selection.
I don't trust myself with color. I've learned to just, you handle the colors. I'm not going to mess with that.
Right. So, I mean, but I think about professionally, what a big part of my own like career path was connected to environmental design, to what degree I enjoyed a successful career as a designer. Not always satisfying. That's why I became an educator. But I think about like that couldn't have been like that whole part of my life that was monetarily rewarded as a designer could never have been if I was unable to discern color, and the broad spectrum and the nuances of color.
Which, by the way, Mr. Fleming, that's a red sweater? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, yes. It is red. No, it's red.
Okay.
It is red.
It's red.
It's red.
Right? These walls around here are white.
Yes.
This audio interface is also red. These knobs are blue. These knobs are red. These knobs are like kind of greenish. These knobs are yellow.
Yeah.
This is a dam,
What is it?
and it has a lot of grays on it. It's not a green wall.
Where are we?
We're in the Guri Dam, the third largest dam in the world.
Huh. Okay. Yeah.
It just looks cool. I didn't.
It's great. No, it's awesome. I'm like, okay. I'm glad to know where I am.
I don't see in black and white. I can discern colors. It's not
right.
Like I said, it's not a big deal.
No, most people who have been diagnosed colorblind are not to the degree that they only see in black and white.
Yeah.
I think about my sons, and their color blindness is not identical. Like, I mean, one of them can see some things that the other one, or discern the nuances of some things that the other one cannot. So their color blindness is not exactly the same. Devin did give Colin those corrective glasses, those corrective colorblind glasses.
I think
he could see a difference for sure, but I don't think there was anything that he felt like he needed to wear all the time.
I tried to wear a pair of those, and if you just think about it, how are optics going to compensate for a lack of cones in your biology?
Right.
The way that I think they work is that, the best of my understanding, which is very cursory and probably to a degree that it's inaccurate, is that it takes certain frequencies of light and it increases the contrast of them by bending the light waves and through optics or something like that, so that you can have more discernment between those, but it doesn't actually give you the experience of a fully color-sighted person.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. One of the reasons why I think people think you're so intelligent, which I think you're intelligent too, by the way, because you do have a really remarkable vocabulary. You are extremely articulate, Frank.
It's not like, that's what I always say is I'm not smart. I just use big words to seem smart, because if I want people to...
But I mean, like you can't use the big words if you don't know what they mean.
Oftentimes.
Well, you can. Yeah. But I mean,
don't underestimate me, Mr. Fleming.
That's funny.
Anyway, so yeah, Devin got Colin the Encaroma glasses or whatever. Yeah.
And he liked them, but it wasn't like, I don't think
it's not like I'm gonna wear these every day.
Well, no, I don't think he does. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hate feeling biologically inferior to people, and I want to have I just want one thing. I don't care what it is, that I can screw with people and it's socially acceptable. I just want to be able to do one thing, or be able to recognize one thing that other people are like, wait, what? How can you tell? I'm like, you can just tell. It's 25.
I'm trying to
obviously.
I'm trying to think if I have any of those skills.
Well, being a color, I call them colored people.
I get to be colored?
Yeah.
I love that.
So as a colored person, you can send coded messages to your friend in broad daylight, and I can be watching, and I can be like, it either looks like a 76
but
or
this is
a
the
24.
thing, though. Like, I don't think of myself as being an unintelligent person, but it would never cross my mind to send color-coded messages to
Yeah, exactly.
people,
Because
I
you're just
could.
punishing, 10% of the population. Which people love to do. It's hilarious because colorblind, look, I don't want to act like too much of a victim. Obviously, people with real problems that actually affect them beyond some very superficial, overhyped wanting to be a victim. Because, look, I'm a straight white male who lives in America in the year 2020, and I have a podcast because my dad already has these microphones and this mixer, and we bought this camera eventually because the other camera didn't work. And so,
and you get to be in front of this dam.
I'm incredibly privileged, and my life is awesome.
We can say this is the damn podcast. Sorry. We can't say that. Sorry. Sorry. This is a family show.
Well, I always tell people, can I swear on the podcast? I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
but this,
no, I'm pretty sure people have said things worse than what I just said. Yeah.
A little bit. But what was I going to say? Basically, my life is awesome, and I've had everything handed to me except for enough cones in my dang eyes to read the Ishihara plate tests. And so I think it's a fairly justified thing for people to just inject their superiority others onto.
Well, for the record, I didn't know you were colorblind until this conversation. We always learn I always learn new things whenever I hang out with you, Frank. So I learned this new thing about you, and now, the level of pity that I feel. I'm kidding. I don't feel pity. I don't feel pity for you.
Exactly. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You're just like, it's 74. It's reading two numbers. You can't read two digits. It's right in front of you. What do you? Oh, and it's so pathetic when I look at I look at an Ishihara plate test and I try to squint at it, and I'm like,
that doesn't help.
It's either an 88 or a 96. Or maybe a 98, and everyone's like, Frank, it's 34. It's obviously 34.
Well, I feel like that's condescending to say it's obviously, because
I don't think anyone's ever said that. I think I just imagine that people are jerks when really they're not.
Okay.
But but
let me just say this though, for your mom to hear on the radio,
I know,
because I let me just say, as an educator, there is this thing called FERPA laws that they prevent me from having conversations about private information about students with even one person, let alone broadcasting it, so I'm like, that's shocking to me.
I'm not in psychology this year or AP Psych, but as far as I can tell, what psychology has become, and you taught psychology now, so maybe you have a little input on this, but there's so much stuff that seems so not important to psychology that's just there to make some half the class feel better than the other half of the class. Why are the psychology kids learning about colorblindness and shaming the colorblind people? Why are you learning about normal tasters versus non-tasters versus super tasters and getting your tongues wet with blue food coloring just to make some people feel bad? Why are you doing type A and type B personalities to be like, oh, type B, yeah, you guys slackers aren't gonna achieve anything. Us type A people, yeah, it really sucks. We might have more of a heart attack risk than you, but we're actually gonna get stuff done. Go back to smoking pot and watching the Super Bowl, you type B slackers. I wouldn't put it past psychology classes, because evidently they don't want to teach real psychology. They just want to give people IQ tests. You're like, let's see who's the smartest one of us.
Well, I will say this, though. Yeah. I feel pretty spoiled in terms of what I get to teach in my psychology class, because it's only a semester class. So they've given me a high school level psychology textbook that was designed for AP Psych. And I don't teach AP Psych. AP Psych is a year-long course. I teach a semester-long course.
And for the record, AP Psych is a very poorly designed test, in my opinion. You memorize a bunch of terms. You don't get to really do psychology.
Well, I think this is the thing, though. I have had, because I teach an elective, I have the freedom to go through the textbook and cull the things that I think are the most applicable and interesting to my students. So I could have spent 2 or 3 weeks on all kinds of brain science.
Yeah.
I didn't, because I was like, I could do that if I want to lose every one of them after the second day, except for the biologists. They would have been super interested, but most of them would have been like, I did not think this is what the class was going to be. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, well, why did students sign up for this class? What were the reasons that they wanted to be in this it's an elective, So what's the reason why they signed up for this class? They probably want to understand themselves better. There are probably significant people in their lives they want to understand better. They probably want to be able to figure out, how do I navigate the dynamics of relationships in better ways? How can I do that with more understanding? So everything I did in that class was more focused on how can the discipline of psychology benefit you in terms of your navigation of self and others. Mm-hmm. That was way more satisfying.
Yeah, these brain quirks are just getting to me. For some reason, that's just been a theme this year of I feel like I'm walking in a sensory deprivation tank, and I don't take in nuanced or complex information the way other people do, and thus I can't spit out nuanced or complex ideas, and that makes me useless in whatever I want to do, and that's scary. And so I want to fight back against that, and I want to,
Yeah, but I think, I mean, our brains have to be, to some degree, selective. I mean, like, we do have we have a capacity, but we only have a capacity. And like, when I think about, I don't know ultimately what you're going to do with your adult life. I hope that it will involve narrative. I hope that it will involve the creative way you have found in telling story. I hope that will be a part of your future. And I think you're looking at film school or art school. To be able to, like, how do I effectively tell story? How do I effectively generate narrative? And so I get very excited about that for you specifically. But this goes to a subject that I've always been super interested in, and it has to do with what is considered a phenomenon, and I don't think it is at all. And it's polymathism, or the idea of the Renaissance mind. And there are people. I don't think polymathism is a phenomenon. I think everyone is a polymath.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone is polymathic in terms of, like, having multiple aptitudes that could be developed. The issue isn't so much whether or not I'm going to fulfill all of my aptitudes. I'm not. I can't. Like, there aren't enough days in the week, weeks in the year, years in a lifetime to be able to master all of the information that would be within the potential of a polymathic mind. And so by default, we have to select. Mm-hmm. And so I don't even know that I think it's as much an issue of, I'm sure there are people that are more intelligent than I am, that are capable of that have more RAM. I think you used that expression earlier. That have more RAM. They're able to store more data, than I'm able to store, or not, because I think about how bored I get with a particular subject, and all I want to do in the whole world is move on to another subject. And I feel like everything about the commitment to specialization, I recoil at the thought, because I always feel like if I were to do that, there would be all of these other things I'm interested in that I would have to forgo.
I think that it's a really damaging thing, that it's a damaging idea that people espouse often. I see it espoused often, and there's like a religious, not to throw Christians under the bus or anything, but I think there is a Christian subgenre, which is God has a plan for you. Mm. But even beyond that, it's the idea that you were meant to do something, right? And you have to find out what you're good at and get in where you fit in, right? And that you have some aptitude, you have some purpose, and you need to fulfill that. And to me, there's nothing scarier than wanting to do something and then realizing that your purpose is something else, or that you feel guilty for doing what you want to do because you realize that you're better at something else. Like, for example, if I took some all-encompassing aptitude test and it turns out, well, Frank, you're not really that good of a filmmaker, storyteller, creative art, entertainment media person like that, you'd actually be better even at something that makes me feel cool and smart, like math. Your math score is 86 and your creative entertainment score is 73. Of course, your bus driving score is like 105, but
No, you can't even change lanes. Don't. Yeah.
I don't want to have to feel guilty for doing something that's more appealing to me. And yeah, is it just me, or is there a lot of you're meant to do blank?
Yeah, I think that where that comes from, and if I have any people that are better versed than I am in terms of like the nuance of the history of faith. There are a lot of there are a lot of beliefs that get connected to a particular worldview that are inconsistent with the ancient writing of that worldview. And I feel like the Puritan work ethic is an example of that. The Puritan work ethic, don't get me wrong, there are whole dynamics of the Puritan work ethic that are completely consistent with Scripture. But the idea that you were created to do this job, like this one particular job, or the idea that you were created to marry this one particular person and God forbid you miss that person, I find those things are cultish in their thinking, and they're not consistent with any kind of orthodox interpretation of Scripture. So like when I think about Christian theology and what the Bible has to say, and I did a bit of a word study on this because I was really interested many years ago, because the whole idea of Christian people saying things like, I don't want to miss God's will for my life. And like, what do you mean by God's will for your life? Like, what am I going to do with what's my career going to be? What's my vocation going to be? I don't want to miss that. Yeah. I don't want to. And I'd be like, okay, well, if that is a God's will thing for your life, then we should be able to find it in the book that is supposed to be, God's word to man. And I remember doing this word study, trying to discern, what does this book say about like what God's will is? And I found myself shocked, not with what I discovered, but what I didn't discover. What was not there? Nothing was there about like your job. Nothing was there about your spouse other than the kind of character you should be looking for. Like nothing was there about any of, like every single thing that Scripture said about God's will was directly connected to character. All of it.
Yeah.
And so I would just be like, okay, so like this weird Puritan work ethic thing of like what you just described in terms of like, I have to find this thing that I'm meant and created to do. And it's like, well, if you just want to look at the orthodox interpretation of Scripture, what God really cares about is like whatever the thing is that you choose to do, that you would do it with character. Like you would have a moral character in doing it.
There's a set of things that no matter what your life story or occupation is, you should still do.
Right. Yeah.
Like be a good person.
Be a good person. Be an honest person. Demonstrate deference, and all those things that like we've come to believe are like good qualities in a human being. And so like I think about those things, and I think about that's a weird bondage that a faith system puts on young lives that has no foundation, at least in the ancient writing that we base the entire faith system on. Yeah. It's not there. There are whole traditions that are a part of the Christian faith that put various values on the tradition in addition to the ancient writing. And, I'm not going to disparage any of those things, but I would be shocked to discover if any of those legitimate writers, early writers, were of the mind of like what became the Puritan work ethic.
I always used to joke, I still do, that in pursuing singing and in pursuing vocal work, I'm going against God, because God clearly did not design me to be a singer, because that's one of those things that people just think, well, you were meant to sing. You were meant to do this. And there's this very almost eugenics culture surrounding it. And it's like, this is my big middle finger to God that I'm trying to sing despite his best efforts to get me to stop. And so I guess that's always been a part of my perception of Christianity, is that God figured out the division of labor for us.
Yeah, no, I don't think he did. I mean, I think the other thing too, like it's interesting, even the idea of like of the making of music somehow or they're being divided into some elitist strata, is so contrary to what you actually read in Scripture. Because what you read in Scripture is that God has created human beings to make a joyful noise. you know? And so it's like, that's universal. That's not,
Except for mute people. I guess they can like play on drums or.
Right. But I mean, you know, and I also think that it's ironic that it never really talks about the quality of the noise. It just the attitude of the noise. You know, the attitude of the noise is supposed to be joyful. It never says make a really beautiful on pitch mellifluous noise while you're being joyful.
It's interesting how much churches have had an influence on music education in the sense that in a lot of areas, my understanding is that in a lot of areas of music, you grow up doing something in the church, or you're a part of a larger church or larger Christian organization, will be among the best you can get as far as experience in some types of music and in education in a lot of types of music. And that so much, I go to a Christian school and I take choir at a Christian school, but so much of choral repertoire is faith-based. So much of music repertoire is faith-based that there's this linkage between Christianity, and I've always, not just between Christianity and music, but Christianity and quality, methodical training, education, and practice of music, I've always, it's kind of like the funniest thing ever to me is the prayer cue, where during rehearsal they say, okay, so when I pray, that's your guys' cue to get up and then go back to the risers so that you can already be there when we start the next song.
Right.
It's like, so the prayer is it's just part of the show. It's that you're praying.
It's a cue.
Yeah. And so it's stuff like that where you're glorifying God by putting hundreds of hours into practicing and into getting your intonation right and everything. And there's a certain logic to that, but that's always been a fascinating aspect of Christianity's relationship to music, that there is this component of excellence and this component of craftsmanship and skill, as opposed to just making a joyful noise.
Well, and
which is probably better. You know, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, you know, obviously as a student of music and music history, and I love history and I love music, so that's always been super interesting to me. But I mean, I think a lot of it is just connected to the history of Western civilization. You know, I mean, for literally centuries, music was almost only applied to religious purposes, and at least the music that we have access to, because for whatever reason, starting with Pope Gregory and the establishment of like Gregorian chant, where we actually have manuscripts available to us, there was certainly folk music that was available. No, there's just no record of it, you know? So everything that we know historically is connected to this faith-based dynamic, because it was the only thing that was considered worthy of writing it down. And that wasn't even because it was worthy. It was because of the desire of the church to be able to like have the control of making sure that every single parish was going to do the same thing on the same Sunday. So if we can create a liturgy, and we can have a music that's connected to that liturgy, then we can guarantee that we're not going to have any rogue churches. They're all going to do the same thing. You know, they're all going to follow the same format. And, you know, and that went on for centuries. I mean, all the way until the Renaissance. And then finally people were like, hey, I've got like this staff music. I have this staff paper. I'm going to write a love song instead of, you know, some kind of, you know, tribute to God. Super controversial. People were just like, what are you doing? You know, we even look back on it now and we're just like, oh yeah, you know, like, I mean, yeah, the Renaissance was the beginning of the end for the church, you know, and which is absurd. It just wasn't. But I will say this though, having raised my children in a church that did value artistic expression, I think about like how many opportunities my children had to express themselves musically in ways that they probably wouldn't have had in school. You know, I think about like, you know, things that were written, like that Daryl and I wrote, you know, that for young groups, and we went on tours, you know, and we sang for, you know, we went to different cities, and, you know, like, I mean, I think about like how many of the how many of the school programs are being developed to take students on a month-long tour someplace where, I mean, I remember being in high school and on our nation's bicentennial singing on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Like that was a thrilling memory for me. And that all happened because I was involved in music in a church.
And what I will say is that if you look at the history of painting, or the history of 2D art,
Right.
As you go further back in time in Europe, more and more of it is going to be
Faith.
through the church and faith-based.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't learn to paint in the church.
No.
In modern times, there's no relationship between two-dimensional art and design and Christianity and and church institutions like there is with music.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think too, because music is such an integral artistic expression in the church today. And we see it all different forms of music too. Like, I mean, really contemporary music to very traditional music is still used in churches all over Western culture and the world, So I think it's because part of the liturgy has always included music, where it hasn't always included visual art.
Yeah.
And that's not even necessarily fair, because I think about traditions. Like I'm Anglican, and our tradition includes icons, and so icons are clearly visual. When I think about one of the things I enjoyed so much about traveling in Europe when I lived there, was the stories that could be decoded through stained glass. And well, that's why the stained glass was there. It was there because it was largely an illiterate people, and that glass was designed to tell a story. So there certainly are examples of visual art that's a part of like faith communities, but not in the modern church. Largely not in the modern church. In the modern church, the one artistic expression that has survived has been a musical expression, and it's definitely it's evolved to sound more like what non-faith music sounds like.
Yeah.
That started with Martin Luther. Martin Luther took tavern songs, tavern tunes, and changed the words, and they became Lutheran hymns.
Yeah.
So,
and now we take pop chord progressions and we
yes.
The proverbial South Park example of taking out baby or girl and replacing it with God.
God, yeah. Yeah, clearly. I mean, totally,
Yeah. And on one hand, I really like to rip into modern Christian music, which is white people worship music is probably a more accurate term, because it is probably the worst genre of music.
No,
but
it's not great.
I think that overall Christian music is has actually a more solid reputation. As I've gone through the years of my life, I've come to realize how much Christianity and the church has done for music.
Well, and I would say this too. There's something I'm old enough to remember there being a pretty rich history, because in the 1960s, the 1970s, even the 1980s, there in terms of like amplified music and recorded music, there was. The technology was still fairly primitive, and I think about what music producers are capable of doing today, just because of being able to use sampled sounds, and their ability to use digital sound effects. And I mean, there's so much that can happen today that wasn't possible in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the early 90s. But I remember, as musical technology improved and enjoying certain Christian artists, what I enjoyed about them was their creativity in their artistic expression. And obviously creating lyrical content that was deep and meaningful, challenging, personal, things that I felt like, wow, that's like, I mean, that's doing something positive for my soul. And then coupling that with really, really creative, excellent music. I think about some of the groups that I enjoyed listening to, even into the early 90s. Probably my two favorite groups, three favorite groups, and one of them's still around, I think, a group called PFR, which stands for Pray for Rain, that had a very Beatlesque kind of a sound, but their music was fantastic. And the production quality of what they were doing was so excellent. And the quality of the music, the chord progressions, the instrumentation, there were so many things about it that I would listen to and I'm like, this is better than the secular music that is available on top 40 radio. Like, the quality of this is actually better. And on top of that, there's this amazing sincerity that's connecting that's like, holding it all together. Another group called Burlap to Kashmir. I have always loved Latin jazz, and Burlap to Kashmir was this group of, a lot of them were Latin ethnic jazz musicians. They all lived in New York. Most of them were Puerto Rican, and they had created this incredible sound. It was beautiful and it was deep, and it wasn't just like the Gaithers repeating the same simple three verses over and over again. It was like really, really excellent. And then another group that apparently was much better in the recording studio than live. I never saw them live. A group called Jars of Clay, and their first album blew my mind because it was just musically so awesome. It was so good. Then Christian recording studios were making money, and secular recording studios saw that and wanted a piece of it and started buying them up. And then they started thinking, what is it that Christians want to listen to, and what will they buy? And this entire wave of worship music happened.
That's where "Bless the Lord, O my soul, I am a friend of God."
Yeah,
"You're a good, good father."
Yes,
classic.
Well, and
tunes,
even before that, I mean, there's like a litany of those songs, and all of a sudden, these bands that I had really enjoyed because of the uniqueness of their sound and the sincerity of their content sold out or quit.
Yeah.
And they utterly sold out, and they were all recording the same worship music because it would sell. And then worship music became a commodity. And in my brain, I was just like, where is Jesus to turn the tables over in the temple right now? Because this is horrible, and it's all for a buck.
And I think there's a genuine chance that the low quality of white people worship music had a significant role in me never being a Christian. I actually think that the music was so bad when I was a little kid at church that it just turned me off from everything else. I'm not sure that that's true. I've always assumed that there are two main factors that lead it to have such a poor reputation. Is one, youth group worship teams. I think that when you have middle schoolers who are, when part of your market is middle schoolers who are trying to play this music, you have to make the chords simple, you have to make the music simple.
Sure, yeah.
And the lyrics also can't be personal because the format is any band sings this and it applies to everyone.
Right.
I also would contend that there's an element of, if you're an artist, your God needs to be art. In the sense that, let's take a slightly different example. If you're a comedian, you can be a good stand-up comedian and have right-wing political views. You can be a right-wing conservative, right, and be a great comedian. But as soon as you are a conservative comedian, as soon as you're a right-wing comedian, that means if you have a great joke that has a left-wing message, you have a great joke that makes fun of right-wingers, you can't do it because that's not within your field.
Right.
And so I think a similar thing would apply to worship music. Whereas if you have an idea that doesn't fit that narrative, it's like, sure, that's still a good idea, but that's basically not the medium. That's not the genre. And I think that because there are so many, way more than half of the American population is Christian. There are so many great artists and great musicians who not only are they Christian, but their faith plays a role in the themes in their music.
Right.
And they're still mainstream secular artists that people consume on a secular level.
Right.
And so I've always assumed that there was just an inherent flaw in making your image as an artist and making your message as a musician that God is more important than art.
Right. And I guess the thing is, like, when I think back to some of those bands that I really enjoyed, I mean, they were clearly, they were Christian music recording companies, you know,
Yeah.
like they were, I mean, they were narrow in their focus of like what they were developing and what they were doing. And I didn't have a problem with it at all. Mostly because, like I said, as the technology improved, the quality of what was happening improved. And then there were these super sincere, talented people that what they wanted to do, the music they wanted to make was music that was connected to their faith journey, you know, and I think I appreciated it so much because the music was great and the content was sincere. And as soon as that got replaced with just production and crank it out, I was done. Like, I think it was about that time that I actually stopped listening to Christian music. And I just didn't. I mean, of course, I obviously sang it when I was in church, you know. I sang on tons of worship teams because I was a musician. And so that was always, you know, an area where I could serve, you know, in the context of my local community. But in terms of like what would be on my radio or what I would purchase, what I would, you know, eventually put on my, you know, my iTunes, none of it was Christian music, because it was just like, I hate this, you know. It's been pablumized for mass consumption, and I don't see anything honoring to God in it at all.
That is a good point, that it's kind of corporate. It's a little bit, you know, trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator in a way that the proverbial record industry salesman or executive or whatever who doesn't understand art and music would want to push out.
That's exactly what it was. And I think for me, I was like, you know what? I am super happy to listen to Mozart.
Yeah.
I'm really, really, I'm you know, what I find is typically I divide my own musical time between either jazz or classical, because I mean, there's not a ton of top 40 music that I like, you know, and I also, I mean, in fairness, I have a super narrow band of what I find entertaining, and I don't like a litany of bad language, you know, so much of what is popular now is just like, I feel like people are trying so hard to be real with their language that it's just like, okay, well, I don't think it's real anymore. You know, it's just like, I mean, it's not shocking. Yeah. You know, I mean, to have a song riddled with F words is not shocking anymore. So it's like, now what? Yeah. Like, now what are you going to do to shock people? I just like, it's like, I know. So I'm just not interested.
In their defense, it is, I've had to write a lot of rap verses that are totally clean because they were for school projects.
Sure.
It is awkward to have to do that. And because sometimes it just flows better.
Yeah. But does it flow better because it's your habitual personal language? Does it flow better because it's been modeled that way? Like, why does it flow better?
I think that a large part of why it flows better is because that's just what we've learned to expect. It's the genre of music. It's the genre of music. And that, you know, I think that that's a perfectly good reason to go with it, is because it'll sound odd. And of course, your goal should be to be able to have a completely clean verse and nobody notices. I'm like, oh, cool, that didn't contain any swear words or any explicit topics or anything. Cool, I didn't even notice because the artistry masked that, and it flowed perfectly well. But that is more difficult to do, and it narrows what you can say, I think.
Well, and I say that having also saying I won't refuse to listen to something. Like, if I have a friend and they really like something, I'll typically want to listen to what it is they're listening to, just because they're my friend. And if they're enjoying something and it's influencing them, then I want to be a part of that, you know. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to make it a part of my musical diet.
I think if you really, in my experience with writing lyrics, or writing in general, if you really want to put emphasis on a lot of different things, just yelling a swear word replacement with more magnanimity and emphasis doesn't do the trick. Right. And so that's why people always say, like, clean comics have to work way harder than dirty comics, because they're working under such a constrained set of material, and it's just a more difficult task. And
Jerry Seinfeld talked about that one time he was being interviewed, and and he was known as a stand-up comic that didn't use bad language and didn't necessarily do extremely inappropriate things or say inappropriate things. And the interviewer asked him, like, why do you not do that? And he said, I think it's cheating. And so she was like, explain. And he said, well, every human being has a nervous reaction. Like, our nervous reaction to something that's inappropriate is laughter. Like, we don't know what else to do. So typically we'll laugh. He said, as a comedian, once you get a group of people laughing, it's not hard to keep them laughing. It's getting them laughing, is the hard part. And he said, I just feel like it's cheating. I just feel like I've pandered to like the lowest common denominator, and now I can keep them laughing. I have enough material to keep them laughing.
And I agree that there's usually a disproportionate amount of funny things to be said about explicit topics with explicit language.
Right.
But on the other hand, sure, Jerry Seinfeld and Brian Regan are totally great and they do a good job and it's impressive. But to me, that's kind of like writing a book without the word "and."
Sure.
It's like, wow, that took a lot of work for it to flow that well, but
right.
You could have just written it you could have just taken that weight off your shoulders, and you could have expanded the amount of stuff that you're able to talk about. So,
well, and I think too, like if we're talking about,
I think that perspective misses the point a little bit of comedy.
Well, no, but I would say this too, like even whether it's comedy or it's music, there is like the well-placed expletive can be an appropriate response reaction thing. I think the thing that I struggle with a little bit is just like when it's just like a never-ending string. To me, it lacks intelligence. I just feel like, for heaven's sake, the English language has more words than any other language in the world, and mostly because we've ripped them off. It's like, so I'm like, we have more words than anyone else because we've taken so many of them from other languages. But I'm like with the potential of vocabulary that we have within the context of our language, when we're saying everything is effing this and effing that, it's like, choose words, be an intelligent human and choose words.
Yeah.
Just one man's opinion.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's like, what's a good example? Moonlit Sonata is an overplayed classical music song. That doesn't mean it's bad.
No, right.
It's just if we played it an appropriate amount,
right,
then it would be great.
We'd love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you this as a piano teacher. If I never hear that song again for the rest of my life, it will be too soon.
What about For Elise?
The only song that gets played more than Moonlight Sonata is For Elise. Yes. Yeah, so, For Elise and Moonlight Sonata and Ode to Joy.
Ode to Joy is just so stupidly easy that you can't resist.
So for beginning piano students...
Yeah.
Yes, I've listened to it all. Yeah, and so like for my final examination or my midterm examination, students play scales, which is a fairly tedious thing to learn, but it's a good idea. And they play some assigned piece that they're all playing the same piece, and then they get to choose. And they can choose anything.
Yeah.
But I do give them some options of like standbys like that. It's amazing how many of them will choose them.
Yeah.
And then I listen to them in midterm examination played badly over and over and over.
It's got to be like being an AP Lit grader, and then you read an essay about The Great Gatsby.
No. Speaking of The Great Gatsby, tomorrow night, they're opening tonight, but tomorrow night and then Sunday afternoon, it's a student-directed production of Great Gatsby that I'm going to go see it tomorrow night because a lot of the kids that I work with are there in it. At
Monterey High? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's a good plug. We went way over time.
Did we?
Well, for YouTube, it's fine. Oh. But if I want to put it on...
lots of editing.
Yeah, basically. No, it's I can't download videos that are longer than 2 hours. Wait, is that
the time? We've talked for 2.5 hours?
It's been 2.5 hours. This is the longest podcast so far.
Okay, but Frank, time flies when I talk to you because I always enjoy talking to you. I really do. I mean that sincerely,
you, Mr. Fleming.
Thank you.
It's been, I was looking at the clock because usually, I'm looking at it and right around either the 90-minute mark or the 2-hour mark, which is
180 minutes?
No.
Oh.
No. 120 minutes.
120 minutes.
I knew it was 100. It's just
Math.
120 just sounded wrong. Right around the hour and a half mark or 2 hour mark, I can usually be like, okay, well, we're wrapping up, and we did it. But this time I was like, oh no, it's 1:55. We're just getting started. So
Okay, well,
here we are.
there we are.
I'm gonna have to figure out how to download this video off of YouTube. It might not be possible.
well,
But
I
either way,
apologize for that.
thank you so much for coming on. We
A pleasure.
finally made it happen.
Truly a pleasure. Yeah, honestly, a highlight. Totally the highlight of my week. It just happened in the last 2 hours, 34 minutes, 30 seconds,
And
33 seconds.
all right, well, eventually you just have to click stop streaming.
Yeah.
But
Bye, folks.
Goodbye.